One of the Stomp the Bus show. I'm your host, Mark Harris. Colton is on this podcast, audio only, so you won't be able to see his beautiful face this time. But he has his computer
Unfortunate.
plugged in, so I don't think his stream
Yeah,
will crash unexpectedly. So that's
yeah,
good,
man.
right?
I figured that out. But it's always something. N- can't get the camera feed up and running, but the voice is where the substance is. Nobody really needs to see me. They just need to hear what I'm providing for them. So happy to be on with you, Mark. It's just another day in paradise.
So much fun talking all the. Actually, you know what? There is going to be a lot of positivity in this show.
A rare positive episode, I was gonna say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when the ASU men's basketball and football are recruiting the way they are, there's good things to talk about. So we'll get to that. Let's start out, Colton. You weren't at the spring game unless you were there and didn't tell me last
I was not.
Friday.
I would never do that to you.
I did go. And so I guess I'd want to start out by saying, like, I don't have a whole bunch of like concrete takes on the team because it's a fool's errand to do that after a spring game, as we have both experienced. But my takeaways are, one, I would say Sam Levitt looks the part as a power four competent starting quarterback. I'm not, and that's a good starting point, right? Um, you can see he has arm talent. I got there a little bit late, so apparently he hit a 70-yard bomb to Jordan Tyson at one point, and so that's good. And he definitely missed a few deep shots as the practice or game went on. It was also very windy.
Yeah, I was
Like,
gonna say, wasn't it pretty windy?
dude,
A pretty windy day.
it was very windy. I mean, they had to cancel the after game fireworks. Um,
Oh man.
So like it was probably like 20-mile gusts. Like it was one of the windier days I've ever, there was no haboob, but they came in, but a very windy day. Um, so I'm not going to take too much of him missing a few deep shots. He was pretty mobile. Like
Yeah,
he's
that was what I
fast,
was gonna say too. Like just
right?
based on the videos and stuff that I saw him get around the edge on one play and score.
Yep.
And he looked pretty quick. He looked like he's not going to be a burner or anything like that, but he's definitely somebody who can move. Which, I mean, in the modern era of football, you definitely need a quarterback who can do that. And he looked the part there for sure. Promising start, in that spring game, and a lot of promising takeaways for Levitt. I was going to ask you what you thought of the depth. I know the Liberty kid had a few moments in that game. I want to say, is it Navi Brunson? Did I say his name right?
Navi Bruzon, I
There
believe.
we go. Yeah. I know he had some flashes in that game too, which he was a preferred walk on, and he's kind of been a forgotten name and all
No,
of this.
yeah, he did have some flashes. He was a lot quicker. I think he threw a touchdown pass in there, so he's definitely someone. This year I doubt that he'll get a lot of playing time, but like,
Yeah, just in terms of depth, somebody
right,
that can develop a little bit and do all of that. And then obviously I just had his name and now I can't find it. The guy from Nebraska, right here, Jeff
Jeff
Sims.
Sims. Yeah,
That the expectation is he's going to enroll too. So,
right.
um, that depth is starting to fill out a little bit, which is good. But it looks like Levitt's going to be the guy, and that was our expectation. It
Yeah.
felt like it was all but confirmed when Jaden Rashada announced he was transferring. And my thought is the spring game kind of put some confidence behind that a little bit, and also maybe made us feel a little better about the depth that they'll have behind him. Hopefully, we don't have to dig too deeply into that depth this season like we had to last season. But yeah, promising stuff from the quarterback position, I would say.
Well, and Jeff Sims, when that official rumor, or Jeff Sims is considering, like, Arizona State's in the running for Jeff Sims. Like, there was a lot of negativity around that announcement from Sun Devil
Right.
fans. Like, I get
He had
it.
a
Like,
rough year last year.
yeah, he was bad. Like, he was
Yeah.
bad at Nebraska. But if he's coming in to be a backup, or like, I'm sure he's coming in with the expectation of, I'm going to compete for the starting job. But
Right.
like, it's just, Levitt has been here in the spring. I have a quote that I'm going to get to that, like, Marcus Arroyo, the OC, like, clearly really likes Levitt. So that's another feather in his cap. And he just has more potential too. So like, it sure looks like, game one of the season, Sam Levitt will be the starting quarterback for ASU based on
Right.
everything that we've seen. But I also think it's good to not have someone better than Trenton Bourguet as your backup. And maybe Bourguet will still end up being the backup. Who knows, right? Like,
100%, and
yeah,
that's what this move spells. I think this doesn't really necessarily jump out to me as somebody who's going to push for the starting job, nor would you really want it to be. Jeff Sims did not have a great year last year in Nebraska. I remember that Colorado game being especially bad, but it didn't get much better as the year went on either. What started at Georgia Tech, Nebraska, now to ASU. This doesn't strike me as like, oh, somebody who's going to push Levitt. Um, I mean, you want competition, right? You don't want anybody getting too comfortable, but
yeah,
based on last year, if you're able to get an experienced guy like Jeff Sims, who's played quite a bit at the collegiate level as a backup, somebody who can come in if we run into injury issues down the road, as the season progresses. That's a guy that you want as a backup, I would say. It's not going to be a great thing if you never want your backups to have to play, but it's good when you know that there's at least a guy with some experience back there who can maybe run your offense. And hopefully you don't have to start digging like we did last year with man, how have I already forgotten his name? BYU kid Conover. Yeah, Jacob Conover.
yeah.
So hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but I think Jeff Sims is a competent guy who should be a high floor backup, I would hope.
Right, totally. And he can at least give you like a different change of pace, right? So you come in and maybe you're running more quarterback run stuff than you would have.
He can definitely be like a change of pace, like gadget sort of guy too.
Totally.
If that's what they're looking at, which I mean, based on what we saw from Dillingham, I know a lot of it was out of necessity last year due to the depleted personnel, but I mean, he's not afraid to throw some gadget plays in the mix, and who knows, maybe Jeff Sims will have his own package. Who knows what'll happen with that? But yeah, I'm sure you love that one, Mark. But whatever. We'll wait and see what happens as we march through the summer and get a little closer to the fall.
Yeah, totally. So a few more other thoughts on the spring game. The running backs look good. Rayleigh Brown looked as good as advertised. Scatterboo, again, just probably going to be the best player on this team. Looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
There was some physicality out there. Like this wasn't like your two-hand touch spring game. Like, this was a tackle spring game. And Miles Ghost Rouser, who he looked really good. He laid someone out like right at the goal line in this spring game, and hopefully the guy who got laid out is okay. But that's a bit, like, I feel like he's going to make a lot of plays this year in the secondary. Him and Keyshawn Elliott both come from New Mexico State, and that was a good New Mexico, like, that was a 10-win New Mexico State team, the 10-win New Mexico State team that went on the road and beat Auburn. So I like having those guys in the defense. So overall, a good showing from the team. Don't really have any issues there. Wide receivers look good. Yeah, I was impressed. I thought there would be fewer people there than showed up. I would say there was probably about 10,000 people there.
Wow.
And yeah, like, and there were a lot of people like in the concourse too the whole time as well. So like there were people kind of filtering in and out. I mean, obviously it's a spring game, and there were a lot of kids like out in the front, like playing on like inflatable bounce houses and stuff like that. So like even like if you look at the picture, it doesn't even fully do it justice to how many people there. I mean, I knew I was undervalued how many people that would be there just by the amount of cars that were in the parking lot, right? Like,
Yeah.
so that was, I mean, that it was definitely, it was a lot more than last year. I'll put it that way. So
Yeah,
that's,
I know they definitely tried to make it more of a draw, for people
yeah,
to come out and obviously you talked about the bounce houses and stuff for the kids and stuff, but I know that, and I don't know off the top of my head what they ended up doing, but I know they were advertising it as, you had the fireworks show at the end and some
yep,
other stuff, right, in the mix to try to make it more of a draw for people to come out. And it sounds like that worked a little bit. So that's good. And I mean, that's all part of building the excitement around this program, right? And
yep.
I mean, that's it severely needed an overhaul in that direction. So positive steps, trying to make the spring game more of a draw, get people out there. It sounds like it worked. Sounds like it was a pretty good product too on the field. Competitive game. So, I mean, everything. And I'm sure we'll get into recruiting in just a second, but it seems like it's all systems go right now. Which, I mean, as somebody who
Yeah.
follows ASU sports, can only mean that we're trending towards something negative. But I mean, for the time being, we'll just enjoy the fact that football is definitively on an upward trajectory for the first time in what feels like a very long time. At least that's how it feels, and that's how all of the news on the recruiting, transfer, coaching front, all of those fronts, it feels good. So yeah, nothing but positive things to say on all fronts so far. So we'll see how long that it stays that way.
Well, there is one slightly negative thing of news. I'll just get out. Did you see that Elijah Badger is going to visit Arizona for
Yeah, he
transfer?
also visited Washington. For me, it's like when somebody leaves the program, it obviously everybody's going to be like, "Oh, going, enemy territory, all that stuff." It's like once they're out of the program, that's kind of it. Like it doesn't really bother me where he ends up. If that's the good fit for him, that's a good fit for him. I don't know. Like it's his decision. He did some good things for ASU. I don't know. I guess his destination doesn't necessarily bother me too much. It's also just a visit. He did visit
True.
Washington as well. Who knows? I think this rivalry it does run pretty deep with players. I guess some players.
Some players, not
I
all, clearly.
yeah, not every player, but some players it runs pretty deep for. But I think this rivalry is something the fans really take pride in, right? It's something the fans
Well,
really
yeah,
enjoy. The fans really enjoy observing. It just doesn't strike me as like this setback for the program. Obviously, he's leaving, and
no,
we'll
no,
play.
yeah, no.
Yeah,
So
we'll
like,
play U of A and everything, but I don't know. Once they're out of the program, I don't really care too much where they go.
yeah, that's fair. I get that, and that's why I want him to go to Washington or Florida. I just don't want him to go to U
Right.
of A. Like, I just,
No, I get it. I
yeah,
get it. There's definitely some of that. Like you don't want to see him end up there, especially after he spent the time that he spent here. But ASU just had a guy transferred from U of A too. His name
no,
escapes me,
exactly,
but
yeah,
it's not in this era of
I know,
mercenaries
yeah,
in college football. Like I guess the that rivalry is going to be tested. I would think over, especially as we progress into more um, I don't know, unique circumstances with the direction college football seems to be heading, with the reports of revenue sharing and all that stuff coming out
right,
too. Who knows what college football is even going to look like? The tradition, like the rivalries and all that other stuff. It's always going to play a role, but how deep that's going to run beyond just old school fans, I don't know.
yeah, no, that's. That's true. I agree with all that, and I also do not want him to go to Arizona. I
Yeah,
just
which
don't.
is completely valid. Like you don't want
Yeah,
to see him play for them, but it is what it is.
totally. Well, how about let's switch it over to some guys that are coming in. Do you want to go over the recruits that have come in, or some of the incoming transfers or potential transfers first?
Let's look. We can start with recruits. I know today they just landed
Yeah,
Makai Stewart out of Long Beach.
12
Uh,
commits. ASU is
yeah,
now the number one team in the Big 12 in terms of recruiting. They are 14th overall in the high school composite rankings. Um, that's going to change. They're not going to finish
yeah,
14th. Like there are a lot of schools below them that have like Oregon is at 25th right now. Okay, so like and they have 1 5-star, 4 4 stars, and a 3-star. So like Oregon will finish ahead of them. Like I'm not. Like ASU isn't going to finish that high,
right.
but this is still a fantastic start. Like getting all these
Yes,
guys to commit based on what I've seen from Chris Cartman of Sun Devil Source. It seems like there are going to be even more guys committing soon. So some of this is probably because they have the recruiting restrictions in the summer. So they're getting a lot of stuff done early. I get that, but at the same time, like it's been years since they were this high in recruiting rankings this
at
early.
any point. Yeah,
Yeah.
this early or at any point, really. I mean, the big thing that jumps out to me, I think, is the volume, and I think that's where you're seeing them as high as they are, right? When you look at the
Yeah.
breakdown of their recruits, it's 2 4 stars and 10 3 stars, which again, there's nothing wrong with volume, right? That equates to playmakers coming in and at the very least serving as depth pieces, um, and maybe even developmental guys who can contribute down the line or whatever, however it ends up going. Um, I think it's exciting and it's really cool to see, especially number one in the Big 12. I think that's awesome. And it's not like the number two team is. They're Texas Tech is number two, and they have 2 4 stars and 8 3 stars. So they're in a somewhat similar
Right.
position.
Right.
I don't think you're going to see, as far as this could shake up as we progress, and it likely will. But I think what you're seeing right now is a product of the volume that they're bringing in. And again, I think there's going to be some regression in that department when they hit their self-imposed dead period, whether that be over the summer, whenever that's going to be. I don't know if that's decided yet or not, but whenever that's going to be, some of these other schools might catch up. So, I mean, at the very least, it shows progressive thinking on the part of Dillingham and his staff, recognizing like, hey, we're going to be behind the curve at a certain point because of that recruiting restriction. Let's get ahead as far as we can in terms of recruiting and set ourselves up to sort of weather that storm when we hit it, right?
Right.
14th nationally is insane. Like that's at any point, right? For this program. So
Right.
I don't know. They're building something. They're building. Obviously, Dillingham is the youngest coach in college football in the FBS ranks, right? Like they're trying to build something a little unconventional here, right? They're thinking outside the box, and they did with this hire, this guy who's passionate about the region, passionate about the program, and I mean these are the early returns, and they've been nothing but favorable. I think everything that has happened so far with this program, he's sort of taken it in stride. It was the investigation. It was all of the injuries from last year. It was, I mean, even the Haboob delaying the game until 1 a.m., right? Like he's had to weather a lot of figurative and literal storms. And he's done a pretty good job so far. I think he's passed every test with pretty flying colors. And we'll see what it equates to, but 14th nationally and first in the Big 12 in recruiting, with what seems like even more on the way. I mean, everybody who's covering this team has said like likely moving up sooner rather than later is what Chris Cartman says. So
Right.
um, it's exciting. They're getting pieces in here, and then I mean at composite too. They've Dillingham has performed really well in the transfer portal, so that composite should shoot up too once they're able to add some more transfer pieces for the next season as well. And they'll be able to go from there. But I mean, 2025 is looking great. I think they've got a ton of talent for 2024 too. It'll be exciting to see what they do this year and what they're able to build on from what they established this year.
Totally. And another thing, so you have two, most of these schools in the top, let's just say 15, are blue blood, are like power programs, or like Texas A&M, like power program adjacent, schools with tons of resources and all that. And then you also have Syracuse and Wake Forest mixed in. Syracuse has 18 recruits and Wake Forest has 15. So they're both going to drop below ASU, most likely. So in the same way that some schools are going to pass ASU, there's some other schools are going to drop below them. And you mentioned, but there is a good chunk of 3 stars, right? It's 10 3 stars, 2 4 stars. A lot of these 3 stars, it's not like we're beating out like San Diego State and UNLV to get, like, it's not like low level 3 stars.
Right.
A lot of them are like being recruited by like the guy from Mountain Point that we got. He's recruited by USC, and UCLA wanted him. The tight end we just got from Southern California, he had a lot of offers. Even the guy today, Mekhi Stewart, he had offers. So like, it's not like you have to look at who else we're competing with to get the specific player. So that's an important kind of way to look at this. And here's a guy he's a much more normal 3 star. I haven't pulled up, his Benjamin Adebayo. He's a safety from Orange Lutheran. He's offered by U of A, SMU, BYU, and Cal. So like, he's more of like your traditional 3 star, where some of these other guys are like more on the borderline, and it's a good get to get them. I also think that like you are going to fall down in the rankings just as more and more blue chip guys get scooped up. But
right.
The thing is, you're putting yourself in a good position to finish this class with like a top 25 ranking in the recruiting rankings, and like, I don't know, 5 4 stars. You mean you get 3 more? Like, that wouldn't be crazy. And a class like that is not like crazy for ASU. Like, Herm Edwards had classes like that. Todd Graham had classes like that. I mean, I think Dennis Erickson did as well. So like, it's just setting yourself up well. You're building a solid foundation. You're not overly at this point. You're not overly reliant on the portal like Colorado is, for example, where it's just constant in and out.
Fire right now. Colorado's a dumpster fire.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Those guys need to get off the internet.
I love how he's tweeting like, my son's gonna go top 5. I'm like,
literally, that tweet almost ensured he's not going to go top 5.
Yeah, well, especially in the backdrop. In the backdrop of it coming out that Spencer Rattler fell down a lot of boards because of the
Netflix show.
Yeah, of him just being an a-hole.
Yeah.
And like,
when he was in high school, man.
Exactly.
He was like 17, 18 when that came out. He's probably 24, 25 now, something like that. So, I mean, this stuff happens. Man,
anyway,
I don't know what's going to happen, but it's just, that's another interesting thing to talk about, though, is because, they were such a story last year, and they're so online with this new era. But that was kind of the ugly side of what, social media recruiting is, I guess.
Well, and I think it's totally. I mean, just shitting on mid-level college players when they're out the door. It's like, dude, look, that's just such a bad look.
When your dad is Deion Sanders.
Yeah. Well, that's Deion himself doing it too. Like,
right, 100%. Like, you're the coach's kid. It's
right.
Very tone deaf.
But regardless, it's good that ASU. This is the thing that we've like complained about with the school in general, but like ASU football is just doing like normal things on the recruiting trail. It's not
Right.
it's not trying to outsmart everyone else. It's just let's just add like do a lot of work recruiting, and hopefully these guys pick us, and we be great hosts to them when they come and visit our school for visits, and it's just like just build,
Very
and
ho hum.
yes,
Just go
that's a good way
about
to
go
put it.
about your business. Go about your business. Do your
And
thing.
it's not trying to
Block out
reinvent
the
the
noise.
wheel
Right,
with,
right.
and you're also not like, you can see they have a very, like, they're targeting guys like Southern California, Vegas, Phoenix, Texas,
Pacific
and like a
Northwest.
little bit of Louisiana, and maybe you'll grab a few guys from the Northwest if that presents itself. But like, it's not like Herm Edwards' staff. Oh, and Hawaii as well, obviously.
Right.
But it's not like Herm's staff where it's like, oh, we're going to Florida, we're going to Virginia, we're going to Ohio, and like some of those were good players. Like, I'm not like it ultimately like I'm on the train of I'm on the train. I'm on the side of just
Forgot
bring
about
good
that.
players in and hope it works out. But if you're gonna, like, it would still be better to get guys who are at least from like the Southwest or from the West Coast or whatever. Just just not as far away from home, all that stuff. It's just less complications. Um,
Right.
and the other thing that the previous staff did not do, to a hilarious degree, is uh, build relationships with high school coaches in the
Yeah.
Valley, particularly. Um,
Right.
so
That's kind of with this staff, with the members of this staff and the roots that already exist between members of this staff and the high school football community. I can't see that really ever being an issue. Those connections, right, with
no,
ASU and Arizona high school teams. So that's obviously a huge improvement, and you kind of touched on
well,
that too.
yeah, and it also plays a role, and we'll kind of shift this over to the transfer stuff. But it helps when bringing Arizona guys back to the
In the
Valley
portal.
through the transfer
Yeah.
portal. We're there. So Jamon Tapp from Texas, he was a former four-star defensive lineman. He committed to ASU. I think he's originally from Louisiana, so that doesn't apply in this conversation. Neither does Jeff Sims. But there are two guys who are visiting ASU. One already visited in 6'4" defensive end Zach Swanson. He was a high 3-star recruit in Arizona, in the state of Arizona's 2022 class, went to Texas. So clearly he was good enough to be recruited to go to Texas. He's in the portal, he's visiting. It seems like that one's going to happen. I don't have any, inside source on that, but like, it seems like that's a fit. You've had other guys commit who are uh, from the Valley come back to ASU, right? Like,
Hmm.
that's not. There's a lot of guys on this roster who have done that. And then the other guy is Ohio State wide receiver Keon Grays, who was a
Yeah.
4-star recruit, went to Ohio State as a wide receiver. Turns out it's hard to get on the field at Ohio State as a wide receiver when you
Who
have
would
like
have thought?
lottery, yeah, like the best wide receivers in the country ahead of you. And now it looks like he is seems like less of a sure thing just because he's regarded as a better player. But I just think this is great, man. Just get these guys back in. Like, we saw it last year with Prince Dorba and Clayton Smith. Um, there've been other players as well. Like, you may not like it might be tough to get on the field at blue blood X, but if you come to ASU, you're still playing in the Big 12. It's not like you're going down to the G5, right? You're still
Right.
playing in like a school that people think is big. You're playing at home. You like your friends and family will be there and all that. Like, it's just a good strategy, and it's just, and like we talked about earlier, like, you already have the coaching staff that has connections in the Valley, has good relationships in the Valley. And so if Keon Gray is commits to Arizona State after being at Ohio State, like that's gonna ease the pain of Elijah Badger leaving. Even though Badger has been more productive, but who knows how productive? Like we don't know what Keon Gray's would have looked like if he had gone to just a mid-level school and gotten more options. I'm not saying he's better than
100%.
Badger, but
No, no, and I think we talked about it last week too, when we talked about the state of the wide receiver room, and I think Jordan Tyson's ready to explode. We kind of saw that in the spring game a little bit too. His the impression he made, but I mean, anytime you're able to add somebody of his caliber, right? And not
yep,
only that, but somebody with roots here and somebody that other high school prospects can look at or even be referenced as like an example, and
mm-hmm.
he can even be a part of bringing those people in and appealing to those recruits, right? I think such a forgotten part of this era is the fact that you might get 2 or 3 cracks at some of these kids, right? So just because they don't pick you out of high school doesn't mean that you can't build on that foundation if you create a strong foundation when they hit the portal, which is what we're seeing so often now.
Yeah,
It's almost a foregone conclusion for some of these kids that they will transfer at least once, which is insane. But yeah, man, it's one of those things where you're going to keep seeing it, and I think that's an emphasis of this staff too. I mean, it's an appealing situation. It's a receiver room that doesn't necessarily have that alpha on paper, that guy that you look at as this is the guy, this is going to be the lead dog in this room. All of those things. You get to work with Hines Ward. It's going to be a receiver
yep,
friendly system. It's back home, right? Like, man, that's not always a huge sell to some kids who are from Arizona. It's
right.
definitely a culture of I want to get out of town as fast as possible in some cases. Uh, but assuming some of these kids want to come back home, it's not only coming back home, but it's coming back home to an up and coming situation that is presently pretty favorable for them as well. So especially in the case of wide receivers.
Totally. And you can kind of see how it's spilling over into the Sun Devils' approach to this class, the 2025 class. Like obviously you have Cooper Perry who left to Oregon, but it's like ASU really, really recruited him. And
Right.
you would think that he would remember that if he doesn't get that much playing time at Oregon. And then it's like, okay, like, and if he gets playing time at Oregon, then it's like, okay, like, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, but
Yeah.
that's the bet that Dillingham is making. And it's also, you see the number one guy in the 2020, yeah, the 2025 class, Logan Powell. He's got some big schools after him. He's got Alabama, Oklahoma, I believe, is interested in him. Wisconsin and Arizona, but Arizona State. He has a visit to Arizona State on May 31st. So,
Sometimes all it takes is a visit. We learned that with basketball. you
well,
know.
but also it's like even if he doesn't commit, it's like okay, you're still building the relationship. Uh,
Exactly.
you already have two of the top six in Ryland, Dillard Allen, Dejon Hinton committed to you. And then, yeah, Desert Edge corner Jamar Beal Goins is committed to Texas A&M, but he was offered by Arizona State. So it's like we're offering guys. Like that's what I think when Ralph's been on the show, I think his annoyance with the previous staff is like they weren't even offering guys. Like they were just like completely ignoring the state. And so when you do like he said the expectation was for the top commits was like at least for ASU to be interested. Maybe I won't go there, but like maybe I will be interested in what they have to sell. And then you start getting more in-state commits, right? Like so
100%.
it's it's a good start to the 2025 class for sure. And I have heard some people say like, oh, like, well, a lot of these guys are just going to transfer anyway, so whatever. But it's like, I get that in that there is some truth in that, but just no one's going to convince me that like bringing in good high school recruiting classes is bad, right? Like no one's going to convince me that. And sure, like some of the guys will transfer, but some of them won't, you know? And so the fact that guys transfer is an even more of a reason to build up a strong, team to begin with. So when the guys do transfer, it doesn't hurt you quite as bad. So it's like I get the skepticism and the cynicism about it in this day and age for sure. Like I'm not like, would it really surprise me if Adrian Wilson, our top commit, finished his college career somewhere else? Like it wouldn't really surprise me that much. I'm not going to lie. But if 7 of 10 of the best players in that class end up being good and they stay here, then it's a worthy class, So like, I get the skepticism, but ultimately, like, you still want to bring in the best talent, right? Like, that's my take on that.
Yeah, 100%. Bringing in that talent is never a bad thing. I agree with that. So, um, just laying that foundation as he continues to do has been impressive to see, and we'll see how that progresses. Like I said, every reporter who's covering this um, is saying to expect a little bit more too. Like they're gonna keep climbing these ranks and keep bringing in these guys. So it'll be fun to watch leading up to next year. And I mean, even if they do transfer out, right? You can't, like you said, you can't expect every single one of these guys to finish their career at ASU. But even if they do transfer out, getting 1 year and starting to build those relationships and making that 1 year as favorable as possible for these recruits is it only bodes well for the reputation ASU is going to have when they try to land recruits in the future. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, and it looks like they are emphasizing that experience and that impression that they're making on these recruits.
Yeah, totally. Um, all right. Well, speaking of bringing in talent,
Yeah,
Bobby
this
Hurley.
is the big one.
Bobby Hurley pulled off the upset of all upsets this weekend. I don't know when it was announced, but one
I got the
Adrian Foster.
notification at school, man. I got like
Yeah,
Monday or Tuesday, I want to
it
say.
was the 29th. I can't even
Either
do
way, when
days.
Woj breaks
It was
a
Monday.
recruit,
Yeah.
yeah, when Woj breaks that you've landed a recruit, that recruit is a pretty big fish, I would say.
He's literally a big fish. He
Yeah,
is 6'9" center Jaden Quaintance. Uh, he plays at the Word of God Christian Academy in Raleigh, North Carolina. I don't know if he's actually from North Carolina. You never know with these guys because like everyone goes to these prep schools. The crystal ball predictions were Louisville and Kentucky, so that didn't happen. This is crazy. Like this feels very similar to the Rashada not recruitment, but just getting him where it's like, oh, like all right. Although the Rashada we had a little bit more leeway beforehand of him. Like there was more run up of him committing than this guy. Uh, and I mean, Quaintance, like he's the 8th overall player in the class. He's a clear 5-star. The only weird thing is that he's 16. And so there's like questions about his eligibility, like not obviously not in this upcoming, like this upcoming, he'll be able to play this upcoming season, but like how long he has to be in college, right? But
I think it said 2 years with the NBA draft rules. It would have been 2 years,
two
which I
years,
mean, as long as he's on the floor for 1 year at ASU, this is a
yeah,
huge win. Like you can't ever expect somebody of this caliber, especially in this era, to be on your roster for longer than a season. If you get him
totally.
for a season, that's a huge win. I partially still am like holding my breath until he's literally wearing the uniform running down the court. then I'll be like, okay, we got him, because so much can happen between now and
I totally get
next October. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure he signed and I'm sure he's done all this, but I mean, this is a 16-year-old kid, man. Like, and it's also interesting to me, how does NIL work for somebody that young, right?
Well, we're going to get into an interesting. I want to kind of save this conversation for its whole kind of give its full worth because it's very unique that Hurley's trying to do. But anyway, continue with
No,
that thought.
let's get into it because I'm
Well, I just
curious
want to talk
about
more
that.
about Quaintance before getting into the report from Jeff Goodman about.
Okay.
But
All right.
clearly,
So
like, anyway, yeah.
no, yeah, go ahead. I mean, it's a huge get. It's this roster for next season is starting to fill out pretty nice. The size is definitely there.
Dude,
Um,
yeah.
it's looking like this is going to be a pretty solid team next year. But again, we're looking at our first Big 12 season, and we've talked about this a ton. The Big 12 is nowhere near the level of competition they are used to on a night in and night out basis, right? So
Of course.
they're not going to have any sort of cupcakes in this slate. Not that they were kind of the cupcake last year for a lot of these teams, but uh,
Yeah.
you're not. There's nobody that you're going to be able to beat up on like there was in the Pac-12 when it wasn't you, right? Like that's not going to exist in the Big 12. So I mean, they're loading up. They're getting ready to go. I think if you have this roster in the Pac-12, you look at this team as a potential, could be a dark horse to win the conference. But in the
Well,
Big
yeah.
12, you don't know what you're going to get, who's going to be there, all of those things. So I guess with this roster, I don't think it would be too outlandish to say they could probably hang around the middle of the conference, which is better than I thought they would be.
That's
I
the hope.
I was under the impression they would be sort of a basement dweller with everything going on, but Bobby Hurley has completely shattered that expectation and flipped it upside down so far. So it's exciting. He's a huge get, the highest recruit. Um, Based on whatever ranking you're looking at, it could be different, but the highest recruit since James Harden, Josh Christopher, all those guys. So it's exciting stuff.
Dude, it's awesome. Like, and you mentioned that like I'll be happy if he's here for a year. Like, I agree. Like, it would be great if like for whatever reason he spent both of his 2 years in college at ASU. I just don't. That just seems so like outlandish, honestly. Like, it would be
Yeah,
great if he was at ASU for 2 years just solely because of um his age, right? But it feels like he'll just transfer somewhere else, or he'll play like overseas or whatever. Like, I mean, the fact
right.
that like,
Go G League or something.
yeah, and like the fact that he's like gone to us so kind of late in the process is somewhat of a red flag in its own right. Well, I think the G League's getting rid of the G League Ignite, so that does change things. But
Yeah,
um, I mean, I'm happy with him, but I'm also it's like it's not just that it's Jaden Quaintance coming in. It's that you have four guys coming in, three of whom are 6'8" or taller, just as freshmen. And so that is awesome because you have Amir Ali and Sammy Yane coming in, but two 6'8" forwards. Quaintance, a 6'9" center, and he's probably still going to grow, right? Because he's 16. Highlights. I mean, his highlights looked exactly what you would expect a five-star center. Like he was just, dominating out there. I don't really have
right.
any like I don't have any thoughts on his highlights. It's like, yeah, he kicked ass. Like like he's a six
Yeah,
nine.
obviously.
Like I get that he's playing against AAU against good competition, but still, it says he's the highest commit to ever come here. So you know who's fourth?
Fourth, Lou Dort.
No, Dort is third. Fourth is
Okay.
Enoch Boyaki.
I was not going to guess that
who
ever.
is now at
Dort is
Fresno
third?
State.
So Dort is
Yeah.
higher than Josh Christopher?
No, all time is Christopher second,
Where's
according to
Harden?
24/7. Yeah. Well, maybe Harden is not, let's see. Because Harden might have just been a 4-star.
Harden's got to be up there.
I'm looking at. Okay, maybe Harden's not on this.
Yeah, I'm sure it's. I mean, the big four
But
now are Quintance, Harden, Dort, and Josh Christopher. But Josh Christopher is one of the biggest what ifs for me, as you know, in my time following ASU sports. Like, it's so unfortunate that his time at ASU sort of coincided with the weird COVID year. So
yeah, I guess. Like I don't know. He was a one and done guy. It's just kind of how it is. I do think it's funny. Like we actually have a friend who like he'll criticize Hurley of like Hurley's a bad coach because Lugens Dort didn't get drafted, and I'm like, well, that's more on NBA GMs,
it's
right?
also, I mean, if you
Like,
look into that a little bit, it wasn't even necessarily on NBA GMs. I think I can't remember how they were able to finesse it this way or like finagle it this way, but Dort actually like wanted to go undrafted, so he was able to pick where he went. I remember reading something about that. So
was
I'm
that
pretty
only
sure
once he
his
thought he was going
agent
to
was
be a
like,
second rounder though?
yeah. So if we're talking about drafted, Dort definitely would have been drafted. He
Oh,
was
okay,
just pushing to go the UDFA route
smart.
so that he could pick where he ended up. And I mean, we all know how that went. Number one seed in the West.
That's right. Yeah, so just a really good freshman class. I mean, they have the 7th ranked high school recruiting class in men's basketball. That's just crazy to say. Like, if you add up both of on, today, March 2nd, 2024, ASU football and men's basketball, when you combine their 24/7 composite rankings, they're 21st. Like 14 in football, 7th in basketball. Like that's crazy. So
Yeah,
it's
man.
just the class in general. And then we didn't even talk about any of we've talked about Bashir Jihad from Ball State coming in 6'9" forward/center. We didn't talk about guard Alston Mason coming in from Missouri State, and he how many points did he average?
He
Uh,
led the Missouri Valley Conference, didn't he? In
yeah, so
scoring with like
this is from
20.
Arizona Sports. And he committed like 2 weeks ago. We didn't even mention this on the last show. Transfer portal, third team all league in the Missouri Valley Conference. The rising senior averaged 17 and a half points, 3 rebounds, 3.6 assists, shooting 42% from the field, 35.3% from three. So he's just a solid guard. I think his dad played for ASU basketball too, so that's cool. And then you also have wrong link. BJ Freeman. He was a 4-star transfer. 0-star coming out of high school. He was at University of Milwaukee, but he averaged like 21 points a game. I know Providence was really after him, so that's a really big get. And it kind of came the same day as the Jaden Quaintance news. So it came out 2 days before, on the weekend before. So it didn't really get as much attention, but this guy might be the biggest transfer guy we get. I mean, 6'6" junior averaged 21 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 4.1 assists per game. Like, those are real numbers. Like, I know you're getting playing in the Horizon League, but that's a really big transfer addition for ASU. And then they bring someone back. We hardly knew ye, Austin Nunez. After barely playing at Ole Miss, he's coming back to Arizona State. So all of
Yeah,
a
I mean,
sudden, like Andrew,
that
and
first
obviously you
year,
bring
man,
back.
Yeah, I think he might be a forgotten piece a little bit. That first year he was here, he was hurt a ton, but he showed out in that first
Yeah.
tournament with Michigan State, or not Michigan, I mean. So we'll see what we get out of him. Like you said, he didn't show too much at Ole Miss. He didn't get on the floor, but um, he showed flashes his first time around. So he could be a sneaky little piece that they add too.
Well, and he was better than both of our freshmen last year. As a freshman, when he was a freshman 2 years ago, he was better than Watson and Green last year,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
so, he's going to come back and be a big part of the rotation, I imagine.
I would think so too. And I
Yeah.
mean,
And
there's opportunities for guards, right? Losing Frankie Collins, so they're going to
absolutely.
need some guys to step up. And I mean, Celebunge I think he's still in the portal too.
Well,
Um,
I don't really
he
care
was.
about like Cellabung, like,
I'm talking like he was
oh,
part of that rotation though. He was somebody
oh,
who
right,
came
right,
off
yeah.
the bench, and I'm not talking like starters, but I mean, you need rotation guys who Hurley trusts to put in the game, and he gave Celebunge a lot of run. So filling that void might be important too, and who knows where Nunez ends up. So the more depth, I mean, depth is like the key to any conversation we're going to have. The more options you can have to fill those roles on your team, I mean, the better it's going to end up. So especially with familiarity too, Nunez kind of knows how it goes, which I mean, that's got to be a favorable sign too for what Hurley's doing. A guy left and
Totally.
recognized the grass wasn't greener and still decided to come back. So
Well, and
yeah,
it
man,
speaks to Hurley. It speaks to her. This is one thing we love about Dillingham is Hurley is totally like understands just this is how college basketball is, and you kind of just have to deal with it. So
right.
don't burn bridges on the way out because what do you know? Austin Nunez transfers back to Arizona State. So you keep a decent relationship, and who knows? Maybe good things happen. And yeah, like Adam Miller's coming back. Sean Phillips, it seems like he's coming back. So you have those guys coming back. You have a backcourt of Miller, Nunez, Mason, and Freeman. And you get two of those guys to hit, and that's that might be enough that you need. And so you've got length and good guard play, and so it seems like because the thing is, last year like they just didn't have any length, like other than Phillips. It just there
Right.
just wasn't like yeah, sure, like Alonzo Gaffney is tall, but he played on the perimeter, and
Yeah,
like
and it was just such a streaky team. I mean,
yeah,
1 through 4 outside of Phillips, like those guys, if they had any room around the perimeter, they were shooting. Like there just seemed to be no flow. When they were on, they could beat teams. We saw it when they beat, Wazoo and
right.
Utah, Colorado. Like they had a little run, but when they were off, you got blowout losses.
You got
You got
awful,
ugly
just
losses.
awful games. Yeah.
Right,
Um,
right. So finding that consistency, I think, is important, and doing that in multiple ways. You talked about the size, but not just size on the wing, size across the board, and guys who can do a little more than just pull up from three all game.
totally. And like the same negatives that come along with the Hurley coaching style, the Bobby Hurley coaching style,
Yeah,
are still not the Danny Hurley coaching style because
big distinction.
there essentially are zero negatives with him, but the Bobby, like the same negatives that have existed in the Bobby Hurley tenure in terms of coaching style, like they're still going to have bad offensive games this next year. The question is like, do you have enough good games? Do you stack enough good wins that you can overcome some dumb games? And do you play good enough defense? Do you can overcome that in a few individual games as well? And so I think they've done a good job. Just more size, therefore like more consistent scoring. And you're bringing in guys who have proven it at other places too, albeit lower levels. But um, and you bringing in high level recruits. So there's like there was so much negativity at the end of this men's basketball season, and for good reason. I mean, it like we've said on the show, like Bobby Hurley probably would have been fired if he were at most other, power, high major men's basketball programs, right? Like,
Right.
it's the fact that he was at ASU played into the fact that he's returning. That said, he has made the most of this situation. And he clearly has it looks like he has a good eye for talent. And he's going out of the box to get there. So I'm going to share a tweet. This was from the 27th, so that would be Saturday. Let me put that on the screen. All right. This is from Jeff Goodman, who is a college basketball reporter, Field of 68. I'm just going to read this tweet out loud. Arizona State coach Bobby Hurley in talks with major Hollywood producers and streaming platform to create a made-for-TV docuseries leveraging Hurley's personal NIL, success as a player and coach to forge Fortune 500 brand partnerships with the intent to further increase the visibility of the men's basketball program, source told the Field of 68. So there's a lot in there, right?
Yeah. I'm kind of trying to make
does-
sense of what that would be. Like,
right. And the phrase I'm looking at here is made for TV docuseries.
right,
So,
like the Netflix original series or something, like
Yeah,
TV One
like-
or whatever.
where they just follow around, like kind of like a Last Chance U type thing.
Yeah.
I have a few thoughts on this. So number one, like, I like that Hurley is at least trying to do out of the box things to generate NIL, because it seems like that would be part of it. Like the companies would pay the players through NIL, and it sure seems like that's a big reason why Jaden Quaintance came to ASU, right? Like there's no, official wording on that, but it sure seems like it. It does come off pretty desperate. I won't lie. Like, but there should be desperation,
Yeah.
There should
No, I
be.
get it. I don't even know if I read this as desperation. This just seems like,
I do.
why hasn't someone done this yet? Like,
Well,
that's how I'm
Yeah.
reading it.
I think the reason why I think there's two. One, coaches are just paranoid as all hell. Like,
Right.
there's that. Second reason is, do you really want to have cameras around if you have a season that's not that great? Right? Like,
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, it's a huge roll of the dice. It's a risk for sure in that
Yeah.
regard. I mean, it's innovative though, and
it is.
you know about ASU and innovation.
It is innovative.
But beyond that, it's a unique way to sort of get the program in front of more people and increase that visibility, which is that last part right there.
Yes.
Increase the visibility of the program, and I don't know, it's unique. And if it drives NIL, if it drives money, if it leads to players coming, then I think it's a good idea. It's a swing for the fences, right?
Yes.
So we'll see. I mean, where it ends up, but it's more content to consume for a team that I follow, and I mean that means I'm going to be watching it for sure.
For sure.
So.
And you're right that it's a swing. And the key thing is, like, if it generates more NIL for the players, then whatever, then it's totally worth it, right? Because that'll have downstream effects. Some of the comments on it are pretty funny, I won't lie. Like, one guy goes, pretty sure they're focusing on the wrong Hurley.
Yeah, I saw that one.
You got another one. Ain't nobody trying to watch, quote, Bobby Hurley, the quest for 15 wins. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's good.
You got success as a coach, question mark. So, I mean, like, that's why, like, there's a little tinge of desperation there. But it does
Yeah,
kind of have a similar feel to Colorado hiring Deion Sanders. Not that it's the same, but in the sense of like letting cameras in the locker room type of deal. Because like remember how bad like Colorado was worse than ASU football has ever been when they hired Deion. They came off a 1-11 season that could have been worse, right? Like so ASU I wouldn't even say is even in that dire of a spot, but they are in like a pretty, dire position, right? Like I don't think that like Duke basketball would be like, yeah, let's sign up for this. Even though I'm sure if you're Netflix or whatever streaming platform, you'd much rather, fall around Cooper Flag and the Duke Blue Devils than the Sun Devils, right? But it's a good, like you said, it's a good swing, man. Like this is what you have to do when you're ASU men's basketball. And I like that he's taking the NIL issue and putting it into his own hands.
for sure. No, definitely. I'm excited
Yeah.
to see what the end product looks like, and um, yeah, I don't have an issue with it. It'll be cool, and obviously Duke isn't doing it because Duke has the tradition and reputation that it has, right? Like
Exactly.
we're obviously in a way lower tier than that, and probably a lot of other schools. So for somebody that for a program that is where it is, this is a move that benefits us, but wouldn't necessarily benefit a bigger program. Should it be done correctly and yield the results that those making the decisions hope that it does. So
Well, and the other thing is it doesn't like say Ace like it doesn't hurt you, like, oh no, we'll be bad again. It's like, okay, well, that's standard operating procedure for ASU men's basketball. So like we'll just be bad in a different way, right?
yeah, definitely.
Um I'm looking for okay, here we go. Let's shift the conversation over to baseball, where I don't want to focus too much time on baseball, but they are kind of turning things around. They are now 24-22 overall, 12-12 in the Pac-12. Um, Schedule is being difficult. It's fine. Pulled up on my phone, but I was at the game on Saturday against USC. Just an absolute like they won 17-2. It just looked like target practice out there, man. It was
Mm-hmm.
awesome. And they just beat their midweek opponent twice, which, as we've seen this season, like that has not been a given at all. And they have this outfielder, freshman Kien Vu. He's batting uh, he's batting 450 on the season with exactly 100 at bats. He hit 2 huge home runs in the game I went to. And the other day, he had a 480-foot home run, which is insane. The only guys behind in batting average is this guy, Charlie Condon at Georgia, who's like kind of a generational prospect type of guy. So good company to be in.
Yeah.
Dude, it's we had that one episode where they were like one game above 500. We're like, oh, maybe they can make the tournament. Then they just lost all these games and it kind of fell back.
That was
But
around the Oregon State series, right? Where they had to
it was
go to
before, yeah.
Corvallis. Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, they are turning it around, and they're scoring runs like crazy. I think I saw today they won 18-9 over UCSD. They mercied another team that might have also been UCSD.
It
Um,
was, yeah.
so
Schedules. There we go.
they're scoring a ton. The run differentials have looked pretty solid too. I mean, obviously giving up 9 runs isn't great, but when you're dropping 18, I guess the context kind of matters there. But yeah, the offense seems to have woken up. They have the talent on offense, right? They can score a ton of runs. It's just doing so consistently, and they seem to have they seem to be doing that. So it's another one of those teams where who knows what happens when they get into the tournament, right? That's the beauty of the tournament. You
Yep.
get to kind of make your own luck in that regard, and a little run through that tournament and a favorable end to the season could be enough to get into the postseason. So we'll see what happens with them. Definitely keep an eye on them and see where it ends up.
Well, and the other thing that they have in their favor, so man, that loss on the road to Wazoo, that series loss to Wazoo was just awful. Oh my gosh. I'm just looking through the schedule. But they went on the road and swept UCLA the weekend before USC. Then they win 12-1, 17-2. Then they lose 11-6, which is fine to lose, one of those games. And then you win 15-5 and 19-8. That would be winning 7 of your last 8 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good place to be in, obviously. And up next, they host Washington, which is 17-20-1. So there's a chance. Let's say you go. Let's just say you sweep them. Then you'd be 27-22 overall. Maybe you don't sweep them, you get to 26-23. But like, they've kind of played a lot of the best teams on their schedule already. They have another game against U of A on Tuesday, and then they're at Stanford for their final Pac-12 series ever, I guess, the following weekend. And then they kind of close it out in a weird way. They play Texas Tech twice and then host UNLV on May 18th. But I guess my point with this is, like, they still have a chance to get into the tournament despite really it not looking that way. Like, I don't know what exactly the cut line will be, but it looks like they can get to 30 wins. And where this team has been this season, like, I don't know. It's kind of weird because like they did really underachieve early in the season, and that's kind of still holding them back. But they're also improving in such a huge way right now that you also have to be encouraged.
100%. And that's the thing with, man, if you're playing your best baseball going into the tournament and you have, obviously their resume isn't going to be a slam dunk resume just because, I mean, you talked about it, some of the losses they've had along the way. But if you put yourself in a favorable position going into this tournament and you're playing your best baseball, I mean, there's some good teams in the Pac-12, obviously. But baseball is a game where, I mean, anybody can do anything, right? Like,
Yeah.
any of these teams can get hot and go on a run. Baseball teams get hot and go on runs. So who knows what can happen? You have to take care of what you can control, right? If you win this tournament, then there really isn't, nobody can take anything away from you. But I mean, if you're not handling your business from here on out, then you're putting your fate in the hands of others. And obviously we saw how that worked out last year. So I think
Right.
it's pivotal for this team to, one, keep building on what they're doing, and two, recognize what they can control and not try to get too far ahead of themselves, not try to get too caught up in resumes or anything like that. Because the fact of the matter is, you do what you need to do, and it doesn't come down to a resume. So I think that's the big thing for them. This is a good trajectory. Getting hot right now, figuring it out right now, is a good trajectory to at least make things interesting as they progress.
Totally. Yeah, I did want to get to one. So Bloomquist was asked. This was earlier this week after one of these games. This is a little concerning to me. So he brought up. He complimented Bobby Hurley on getting Jaden Quaintance, and then he's kind of sounded the alarm on NIL for the baseball program. But he also had a quote in his one of his recent press conferences that goes, Bloomquist said he would love to follow Hurley in actively marketing NIL to potential funders. Quote, I just need to know who to get in front of. And to me, it's like, why is it just now that you need to know who to get in front of, right?
Yeah,
And the other
it's your
problem,
third season.
yeah, is that you literally were a player here, so you should know people.
Yeah.
That like, and it's like, and this, there's still no athletic director officially hired. Looks like it'll be Graham Rossini, but who the heck actually knows? But this is also like, this is why you need an athletic director, because like ultimately, like the coach should, be in contact with boosters or whatever to like do NIL, but ultimately that should be I just kind of contradicted myself there. But like the athletic director should be the one doing a lot of this, right? Or at least introducing the coaches to people they need to know and acting as a liaison.
And at least being the point of contact, right? Yeah, you've said it,
exactly.
liaison, like serving as sort of that middleman.
Yep.
But when you don't have an AD, those are the problems you run into. He did have an AD for the last 2 years, so I don't really know.
Well,
but yeah, it is concerning for a third-year coach to be saying that. Or maybe he's referencing like, who do we get in front of? Like, who are the people who are going to be serious that we need to get in front of, right?
yeah.
Like maybe he's talking to people and he's thinking those aren't the right people, so he's wondering, are there additional people I need to? I don't know. That can be interpreted any number of ways, but definitely, I mean, NIL is progressing at ASU. It seems, right? Like there's more opportunities being opened up. Obviously, we talked about the Netflix thing. Football has progressed in NIL as well. I think other sports will eventually start to follow suit as the university starts to follow suit. But the big domino to fall there is getting an athletic director who will support all of those coaches in their pursuit of those NIL endeavors. So, I mean, when that happens remains to be seen. But when it does, hopefully the work that has already been done at the level of some of these sports will see a pretty big boost with an actual, with leadership in place, finally, whenever that does happen.
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, I have a suspicion that like a lot of the, old ASU baseball fans who watched them, back in the 60s and 70s and stuff like that, like I have a suspicion that a lot of those guys probably don't like the idea of NIL at all. But it's like it's the way of the world, And
and those types of guys aren't typically super eager to adapt to new things.
No. No. Well, good show. Good show. No one's internet broke out, although someone's
no technical difficulties. Yeah, I guess I misspoke. Hey. There was one, but you could still hear me. That's what matters, right?
This is mostly an audio platform anyway, so
exactly.
Yeah, hopefully the next time we record, there's more incoming transfers, more incoming recruits, and more just general good news. I think it's good that, even though it's not like any wins on the field, but it was for baseball, more just general good news coming in. So let's
ASU loses a lot on the field, but loses even more off the field. So when we're not losing off the field, it's something that we need to celebrate.
Honestly, that's such a great point. Like, all of these issues with like the Herm Edwards era was stuff like off the field, like
right.
Well, basketball's been.
I mean, Eastern Michigan happened on the field, but that was a result of things happening off the field. So it all comes full circle.
Definitely. All right. Well, Colton, it was great to have you on. Everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Please rate and review on your podcast app of choice. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. And as always, go Devils.